So we'll have a short talk here from a very special guest that we were fortunate to be able to have attend here today, who's Larry Decker, Larry T. Decker, who is the Executive Director of the Secular Coalition for America. He joined the SCA in December 2015. The SCA is a nonprofit advocacy organization dedicated to amplifying the diverse and growing voice of the non-theistic community in the United States. The SCA's 18 voting coalition member organizations are established 501c3 nonprofits who serve atheists, agnostics, humanists, freethinkers, and other non-theistic Americans. And their mission is to increase the visibility of and respect for non-theistic viewpoints in the United States, and to protect and strengthen the secular character of our government as the best guarantee of freedom for all. Located in Washington, D.C., the Secular Coalition for America lobbies the U.S. Congress, White House, federal agencies on issues of concern to our constituency. Larry has spent nearly 2 decades in Washington, D.C. as a government relations professional in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including serving as Senior Director of Congressional Affairs and Director of Government Operations at the Red Cross National Headquarters, as well as Special Assistants in the Office of Legislative Affairs and Public Liaison at the U.S. Department of the Treasury under the Clinton administration. A native of upstate New York, Larry graduated from Ithaca College, where he received his BA magna cum laude. So please welcome our first guest speaker, Larry T. Decker.
Who brings his own Gatorade. Do you mind if I just sit right there? Thank you so much, Beck. I appreciate it. My staff wrote a really nice speech, and well, you can see like that I've already stolen material from you guys. I can't help it. The reason I do, sure. The reason I do, everywhere I go, I take stickers, I take all of this material because someone once told me that the Big Mac wasn't developed at McDonald's national headquarters. It was developed in a franchise. So the best things that I'm going to do in my organization in national headquarters in Washington, D.C. is probably going to come from one of our state chapters or from one of my member organizations where I am today. And I'm proud to be here. They wrote a great speech for me. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to read it because I think I'm the only openly gay leader of a national secular organization. And I almost didn't come this week to Texas at all because I'm heartbroken. I'm devastated with what happened last week. And I go through my motions. The year I came out was the year that Matthew Shepard was killed. I came out to my parents, and my dad was concerned about hate crimes. My mom, who was a nurse in upstate New York, the only people she ever saw die of AIDS were gay men who came home to die. And then their pastor, their Baptist pastor, sent them literature from the Family Research Council. And then they were concerned about my soul, as if they didn't have enough to be concerned about. As caring parents, the youngest of 7 children, and I anguished coming out to my parents as being openly gay. So I wrote him, the pastor, a strongly worded letter. And I said, you claim that you have this unknown and, for whatever reason, ability to talk about family values. But sir, what you just did was the most harmful thing that ever has come between my parents and me. And I copied my parents on this strongly worded letter. And my parents never stepped foot in that church ever again. I didn't take this job to go up against religion or people's individual faith. I didn't. I took this job because I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in the Constitution. I don't believe in candidates like Ted Cruz, who says, I'm a Christian first, an American second, a conservative third, and a Republican fourth. What about all of us who aren't Christian? What about all of us who believe something different or don't believe? And he wants to be our president, or he wanted to be our president. I'm grateful that he's not going to be our president, by the way. I should probably say a couple of things about the secular coalition first, so I don't actually get too beaten up by my staff for not reading the speech. We are your lobbyists in Washington and across the country. We're here to represent the values of the non-theistic community. Our mission is twofold. The first is to enhance and expand the separation of church and state. When I hear Donald Trump talk about, let's build a wall between us here in Texas and Mexico, I'd rather him talk about building a wall between church and state. That's my personal belief. But our second mission is to create an environment in this country where non-theistic viewpoints can be respected and admired and appreciated. And even though they wrote a really nice speech in here, and it's actually a very good speech, I want to talk about identity. I want to talk about the fact that individual identity is so important to how we relate to one another. You know, I came to Texas, and Vic and I met actually, 2 weeks ago at the Reason Rally. We had dinner, and you know, he told me that the Humanist Society, the Humanist group in Houston, was the largest meetup group in the world. And I said, in Texas? But the last 2 days I spent at the Texas Democratic Convention in San Antonio. We made history yesterday. It was the first time we ever have had, by a major political party in this country, at the state level, a caucus for secular Americans. Give yourself an applause. I can't begin to tell you how pleased I was that it happened in Texas. Do you know what that does for the rest of this country? We have 3 planks that are going to be voted on tomorrow. Or today. Maybe they were voted on today and I just am out of the loop. I'm sorry. I'm a bad traveler, and I don't sleep well when I travel, so I could be out of the loop here. I took a bus yesterday. I've never taken a Greyhound before. I'll never do that again. It saved $700 on the budget, so I was, yay, happy about that. It was only $20, but nope, that's not going to happen. I have to say, though, that, you know, if our planks are passed at the Texas state level, they go to the DNC in Philadelphia. We have an opportunity to talk about our issues on a national stage, which is tremendous. Now, I've spent time in Texas. My first trip ever to Texas, I served in the Clinton administration for the last 2 years, and then I went to work for a fairly well-known company here in Houston. Should I say what its name is? It was Enron, yeah.
Good choice.
I was only there for 9 months, and then the company went bust. But it was my first trip ever to Houston, and then I worked for almost 10 years for the American Red Cross, and while I was there, I spent a lot of time in Texas. And I have to say that all of my trips to Texas before I took this job were, they were a little bit sad. I mean, I came here because we either had, a major hurricane, or we had a tropical storm that went through, and Galveston got decimated, or, all of these things. And then, of course, Enron. I'm not even going to talk about that tragedy. But, ultimately, this is the first time I've come to Texas on my own accord, where I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here. And you all did it. I had nothing to do with it. How great was it for me to come in? And let me tell you something about yesterday's caucus. We had 400 people show up at the caucus. Can you imagine that? I thought we were going to have 10 or 12 or 15 people at most. So I woke up, and like Donald Trump would say, I was really low energy. I wasn't really all that excited, and I said to my staffer, Sarah, I said, if there are only like 15 people there, I'm going to be so angry at you for making me come. 400 people showed up. This state is hungry for what we think. That's amazing. And I love it. And I'm grateful. I'm extremely grateful, because what you did in this state this week makes my job a lot easier going forward. I turned 40 last year, and I said, I want to do something easy. So I'll go work for the secular community. Really? That was a mistake. I love everything I do. I do. But I want to actually spend my time, and if it's okay, Vic, if I do this, for a couple of minutes talking about what happened last week, and talking about why this is so important to our country. Because I don't want it to be forgotten. Roy Speckhart is a very good friend of mine, as you can imagine. Our offices are about 6 blocks away from one another. I spend a lot of time with Roy. I'm wearing the Humanist pin. I'm trying it on for size. I came out in January when I was announced as an unaffiliated Christian leading the largest advocacy organization for secular Americans in this country. And I've learned a lot over the last 6 months. I've been on my journey for a long time. My own personal journey of understanding what my worldview is, what I believe personally. I have to say, though, that I almost didn't come to Texas at all. What happened a week ago shook me to my core. Not just because I'm openly gay, but because I run an advocacy organization that has nothing to do with gun control. And I want us to have something to do with gun control. I do. And, with tears in my eyes, and I don't yell very often. I don't. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My mom actually did a good job of like making me mild-tempered, which is amazing for her, and I give her a lot of credit for it. But I want us to talk about the issues facing our country every single day, whether or not they relate to God. Because ultimately, we don't want to talk about God. We want a nation that doesn't talk about God when we're talking about public policy. We want a nation that's talking about our connectedness between one another, how we matter to one another, what makes sense to one another based on evidence and knowledge. And I said to Sarah, who told me I had to come to Texas, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to stay at home and do my thing. Be sad on my own accord. But then I looked at what Vic had posted, and I know that this is about June being Pride Month. This is the LGBT community here. And I am part of the LGBT community. And I said, I've got to go. Even if I don't go to San Antonio, I at least have to go to Houston, because I have to talk to you about my own feelings and the process that I've gone through this past week. I made our communications team at the Secular Coalition go further than they wanted to on our statement. I wish I had it, I don't. But it basically talked about how we as a country can try to make sense of all of this and move forward. How we as a country can actually talk about the issues that created this opportunity. How we as a country, instead of waiting for the next thing to happen, can look back on our history, on our nation's history, on our world history, and say, can't we do better going forward? And they didn't want to say it. And I think they said some of it, but not all of it. And, that's okay. They're communications people. They know what they're doing. I don't in that regard. But they can't stop me from saying my beliefs and my thoughts and my fears and my concerns when I'm standing in front of an audience. And I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again. We can do better. We must do better. And if we can't see the elements of religious privilege in our own country that creates the environment that happened last week, then we're ignorant. North Carolina, HB2, the bathroom bill. Get out of our bathrooms. Tennessee, Mississippi, Indiana. Proposed legislation right here in Texas. I'm about ready and it will happen to launch a national campaign, a 50-state strategy against religious privilege bills in this country. I'm doing it with the largest LGBT organization in the country. I'm doing it with our friends who protect women's reproductive rights. I'm doing it with our friends who protect First Amendment civil liberties. I'm doing it with all of us. But what I ask you to do, because we don't have the relationships that we need in the state, is for all of you to not just come to events like this where you can sit in the audience and learn and hear and talk and have fellowship, which is so important, but to take your fellowship to activism, so that in 2017, when I stand up against religious privilege laws in Texas, I have every single one of you standing with me. And we're all together. I know I'm over time. Vic is saying wrap up. Thank you all very, very much. And thank you for letting me be here.